This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Con Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Con, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Only the Strong Survive. I'm your host, Dan Con, and we've got a great episode for you today. Our guest is Jason Noel. Jason is the founder and CEO of Fat Fender Garage. Was started in 2012 as a side hustle, flipping old trucks out of a small shop, has grown into a full-scale automotive brand with complete builds, custom interiors, in-house fabrication, and some other new items we'll probably talk about today. So before that, Jason was a woodworker, an artisan carpenter, and that craftsmanship mindset still shows up in every build that leaves his business and his facility. And I am just really excited to talk about Fat Fender, but also just about the resto mod market in general. So Jason, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Well, just to kind of, for those who haven't heard of you or your company, let's start things off. Give us kind of the elevator pitch. What is Fat Fender Garage?
Well, boy, it's really loaded. It's a lot of things, which has become hard to push forward. So, but is what I can just reduce down. I feel like what we're trying to be at Fat Fender Garage is a way to remove friction for anyone that wants to get into the resto mod scene, whether they want to buy something or they want to build something. That you've kind of got two different markets there. And how do we take away the friction for someone to go in and get that done and get it done well? And so for the people that want to purchase it, we're trying to remove the friction of, stalling projects. People use your money on someone else's build. And so we try to keep it really tight and really transparent. And then for the DIY that wants to build their own, we want to try to remove the friction of creating as many products that make it easy for them to actually feel successful, do it themselves. So we're really trying to create this little ecosystem of building hot rods, but making it as simple as we possibly can for them.
Very cool. Well, we're definitely going to get deeper into that. But let's go back a little bit first. I thought it was sort of interesting that you started off your career in sort of a different industry.
I did.
Tell us about, like, what did you right out of high school? Did you want to do car stuff? Was it something else?
Right out of high school, so I didn't grow up in a family where we valued education, strangely enough. It was kind of like my mom's a little bit of a doomsdayer, if you will, and so she always kind of felt like, don't go to school because the world's coming anyways. And it's kind of funny. I look back now and I'm like, geez, imagine living your life like that.
Wow.
And here it is, like 35 years later, and life's still plugging along, right? And she's still a doomsdayer today, and I feel like it's pretty tough to like live that way, live your life in fear all the time of just things not going well. And so I have a little bit of that in me, just a little bit when it comes to like my business. If things get a little off track or something, man, I'm like, uh-oh, doomsday's here, like we better fix it. But right out of high school, I didn't know what to do. I liked woodworking. I took like 3 shop classes in high school, back to back to back my senior year. And so I took the opportunity to go serve a mission for my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I went for 2 years, served in San Diego, California, which was awesome and wonderful. And I had an opportunity to grow up, if you will, and learn a little bit more about myself and some things that matter to me. Came home back to St. George, Utah, where my family was living at the time. Parents had divorced, and came back and decided that maybe I'll just go get a job trimming houses out, hanging doors, running case base in a house, and I'll just do that. And so I did that for about 6 months, and 23 years old, I thought to myself, I can do this on my own. I don't need some boss telling me, when to show up and how to do this. And so one of the guys that worked there, I said, hey, let's just start our own business and let's bail and we'll go find our own contractors to work with. And so that's what we did. He had the license, and I had the desire and to go be my own boss. And I learned real quickly that that's not easy. And at 23, I really didn't know anything about running a business. I hadn't been to college. I didn't have a business degree. I didn't have anything. And but we did it anyways, and we were pretty successful and did really well until 2008, when that housing crisis opened up and it swallowed us up.
Yeah, when
And
you said until, I was thinking 2008. That
yeah,
that was a tough time to be in the construction trades for sure.
yeah. And our little market got hit real hard. We're next to Las Vegas, and so we had some of the same, struggles, and a lot of the
Oh,
people
I
you'd
remember
extended.
that. Vegas kind of imploded at that time,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah,
Like,
they did, and a lot of the builders that we had extended credit to, they were robbing Peter to pay Paul when they're building all
hmm.
these spec houses, and then all of a sudden they can't pay you, and we're just a small business. And next thing you know, you got $400,000 or $500,000 that people can't pay their bills, and you're just like, this might be the nail in the coffin for us. And it was really hard for me to go through that and experience that and realize 36, 37, I think, yeah, 37 is how old I was. And then that also shortly after that went through divorce. And so that was, a real low part in my life of just like, wow, things were so good a year ago. And
Did
now
did you have
look.
to fold the business up? Like, did that kill the company?
Yeah, it killed it. I look back in what I know today, and I think I'm a little smarter today, that I think maybe may have been able to make some different decisions, and I probably could have saved that business today, where back then I didn't know how. Does that make sense? I'm a little smarter today, have better
Well,
connections
yeah.
today.
I think you and I have a similar background in that I didn't take a business. I took one math class in all of college. I didn't have any business background, and I'm still learning those lessons. Like
Hmm.
literally this week, I'm spent 3 hours with a fractional CFO having him teach me how to do something I'd never done before. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, you got to kind of learn by doing. And by the time
Hmm.
you get it all figured out, you retire. So
Yeah.
you made a comment
That's.
earlier. I want to go back to it for a second because I think it's interesting. You were talking about your mom being kind of a doomsdayer and how there's a little bit of
Hmm.
you. I don't know if this is what you want to hear or not, but I think that applies to anyone who's been in business for themselves longer than a couple of years. I mean, I've had this scenario, and you probably have too, where I've occasionally, maybe once every year or two, I'll have an employee try and leave and do their own thing, and it almost never lasts longer than 6 months because I
Hmm.
think you have to be a little broken and like you have to be a little masochistic, like as if you're not always in the corner, like with the knife out, like ready for whatever's coming at you, then you're not going
Yeah.
to make it. And I,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur who lasted longer than a couple of years that didn't have at least a little bit of that in there.
And I know my wife does all the bookkeeping, and she'll talk to me at night. Last night we were, in the hot tub. It's in Arizona, so the weather's perfect. 60 degrees. We go jump in the hot tub. It's perfect. And she's like, well, we're setting this up, and it's chewing up all of our cash and blah 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 blah. And then I'm like panic mode. Like, okay. And she's like, no, calm down, calm down. I'm not saying, I'm
I,
just, and
I
I'm
taught
just like,
myself this thing where whenever I do that, and I do that at least 5 or 6 times a week, where
yeah.
I'll get an email or think something or see something, or my controller will say something, and I'll do that, like the deep
Mm-hmm.
breath, freak out. And I've
Mm-hmm.
taught myself this mantra: first thought wrong. Or it's
Okay.
like whatever that first thought is that pounds its way in there when you start to freak out is probably the wrong move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
And
I've
she's like,
like,
well, no, we did a perform on all this. We knew this was coming. We knew that was going to be, and she's like, so we just got to continue the plan, and I'm just like, you know,
yeah.
everything's on fire right now. And
Well, you also went through I mean, you went through the worst case scenario with your last business. So I could see how
yeah,
that could be a learning experience, but also cause a little PTSD too. I mean,
it does. It does.
yeah,
Because I'm like, oh no, this is the beginning of losing everything, and my wife's going to leave me, and this is going to
right.
be terrible. And you kind of go to like worst case scenario like that,
Yeah.
and And I have to, like you said, step back, breathe, and just say, hey, like it's fine. We have, con media in our corner. So not to
That is
put
true.
extra, not to put extra pressure on you there.
No, no. Okay, so '08, you have a, by all accounts, crap year.
Yeah.
What next? What do you do? I mean, at some
So
point.
yeah, so I decided, I was going to get out of construction altogether. It was a love of my life. It still is. I still love it. I do a lot of things around our house and upgrades and things, and I still have, friends that call me from the old days, and this is old days. Like this is like 17 years ago now. And so I kind of, and they still ask me questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? And like I said, we were really, really good at it. But got out of construction, wanted to go into something different. And so, not knowing what to do, I did what everybody does, and you go into real estate, right? Because that seems easy. Go get a realtor's license and sell houses and make a bunch of money you shouldn't be making for something you're doing that's really easy. And it was super boring. I literally could not imagine, like, it almost felt like a prison for me. I was like, this isn't hard and it's very easy. And turns out I can do this with my eyes closed, but it lacks like creativity. It lacks, like the ability for me to create and build and use those, talents and skills that I like to, use often. And so I found myself super bored with real estate, not knowing what to do. My father-in-law had somebody owed him some money, and so they gave him an old pickup truck. And so he has this old pickup truck, and we had this tiny little shop that he had built on a rental property that he owned. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to come help me kind of fix this pickup up?" And it ran and drove, so it was like changing the gauges out to Dakota digital gauges, um, putting a new bed in the old 1953 Chevy pickup truck, and just
Oh, so
just
like a 3100.
yeah,
Those
yep.
are cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so it was a five window, and it was cool, and it was my first experience working on an old pickup truck. I had zero experience. I mean, I had the next closest experience I had was when I was in high school. I had a 1966 Volkswagen Bug, and so that was cool for me, and I'd worked on it and did all kinds of stuff. I rebuilt it, restored it, did all that when I was in high school. But I'd kind of gotten out of that, and so this was a little bit kind of a I wasn't a mechanic. I didn't know anything about it. And so we were just doing like some cosmetic things, cleaning it up, fixing it up. And we got it to a point where he said, let's sell it. He gets bored with projects. So he goes, let's sell this one and maybe get a different one. I said, okay, great.
It's
We'll
also
sell it.
cool that he clearly liked spending time with you. If he was already saying like, let's do it again. So that's kind of neat
Yeah,
as
yeah. So
well.
it was fun. I think he just likes projects and sees things come to the end, and then when they're done, he's like, "Well, I'm done. Let's just do something different." So we did that. We sold it, the deal with me, and I kind of blame him for being where I'm at in this whole mess. Is he said, "Why don't you sell it on eBay? And this is how much I'm into it. If I can get that money out of it, you can have whatever's left." I
Nice.
says, great. How much we into this thing? He goes, we're like 9 grand into this thing, just materials and stuff. I said, okay, great. So sold it and sold it for $19,000
Nice.
on eBay. And I was like, well, I don't think that's fair that I take all this money. He goes, no, deal's a deal. Like he's like, it's fine. Let's get. So I was like, well, I made pretty decent little return on that thing. And so we did it a couple times, and we were having like $6,000 to $8,000 swings every time we did this. And so after about 6 months and flipping about four or five vehicles, I thought, could you make a living doing this? Now keep in mind, I am not familiar with, I've never heard the word SEMA.
Okay.
I'd never, like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so I basically, you know, somebody said, "Hey, there's this new TV show called Gas Monkey Garage." I said, "Oh, okay, I'll watch it." I'm like, "Man, he's doing exactly what I'm trying to
He's
do.
killing it. Yeah.
He's killing it. He's got it all on the TV, how much they're into it." And I'm like, I'm taking notes. How much are they
Yeah.
buying it
This
for?
this
How
is a
much of this?
documentary.
This
Yeah.
is yeah. This is he's teaching me how to do this. Until I learned it was all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Later, I was like, that's not that doesn't pencil out. Like, what's going on here? Like, it's not accurate. So anyway, so it was kind of funny, and so I hired a mechanic. I said, hey, I've got myself a little deeper on a couple of these projects. I don't know how to fix it. So I had like 3 or 4 trucks, and I was kind of cleaning them up, and I said, I'm just going to hire a mechanic, just to help me. So I'm still doing a little bit of real estate, and hired this mechanic. His name's Dave, and he taught me a lot of stuff. I said, "How does the engine work? Teach me everything about an engine. I want to know." And so I became a real student of wanting to learn everything that I could possibly learn about trucks. And so that's kind of like how, the gateway drug right into it right there.
So was Dave so was he technically the first employee?
He was the first
Okay.
employee, yeah, first
Wow.
employee, and he was pretty smart. He definitely knew like the industry way more than I did. He knew people. He talked about all these different names, Bodie Stroud and Rat, Rad Rides Troy's, and all this. He's just kind of
Yeah.
talking about all these people. I didn't even know who they were. I mean, I knew Foose. I knew Chip Foose, right? Like
Yeah, he's he's
everybody.
he's our breakout guy. Everybody
Yeah,
knows. My mom knows Chip. Who's he?
yeah,
Doesn't know him, but
yeah,
everybody knows Chip.
yeah.
Bodie was
Chip.
a client. Bodie's a good dude.
Yeah, he
He
is.
got out of the whole thing a while ago now.
Yeah, he did. And so when he was trying to get into the chassis stuff, I talked to him, and really nice guy. I really liked him a lot.
Very nice guy. Yeah,
Down to earth, just
yeah.
not in it for the wrong reasons. He was just a really good guy. So um, so when I'm just learning all these names and trying to figure out this business, and I decided I'd heard of SEMA, so that came around, and one of these guys I met, he's like, "Oh yeah, I go to SEMA and I sell all my trucks at Barrett Jackson and Mecum, and I'm flipping." And so that was kind of the next phase. All right, well, I'll build some vehicles and I'll take them to Barrett Jackson and sell them.
And you're living in Arizona at that
Living in
time,
Arizona,
so
yeah,
it's
yes.
the home turf.
So it turns out that's not easy either.
Why?
Well, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and so I wanted to make sure what we sold at Barrett Jackson was a good quality product. You can't make money that way. And so when you're a car jockey, your goal is to just make it look good, make sure it runs, ship it. The whole quality and what you're getting is, beware of the buyer, buyer
Yeah.
beware. You got to be real careful. And so I did make a whole bunch of money. I was lucky if I broke even or made a couple grand on it. And I was like, wow, that doesn't seem to work out very well. What should I do? A couple years into it, playing around with it.
So roughly, what year is this now? Like the flipping thing's been going on for a
So
while.
I'm about 2014,
Okay. So you're
2015.
So you're
I'm
a couple
thinking,
couple years into flipping
yeah,
and kind of
hmm
sort of a side hustle, kind of a business.
trying to make it a business. My wife says this isn't worth it. Let's give up, Feeling lost. I'm going to be honest with you, feeling a little lost, like
Hmm.
regretting I should have gone to school. There are a lot of regrets are coming in, feeling. So I took on a customer. I had one guy. I was at Del Mar, Good Guys, and I had an old 1956 truck there. It was a baby blue and a white, very vintage, very stock, very, factory. And I hadn't done a resto mod. I'd seen them, but I'd not, I didn't, I'd never done a LS swap or anything like that. And so a guy comes up to me, and really, really nice guy, and he said to me, "Hey, I'd like to have you come see my truck. I just live here in Escondido, and love for you to come take a look at my truck and maybe do a build with you." And I thought, oh, And so that's how that works. You show stuff, people talk to you, and you get a client. And so, um, I had to fake it a little bit. Yeah, sure. And we get over there, and he says, I think I want to do like a fuel injection. What do you know about these new Coyote motors? And I said, yeah, they're great. And in the meantime, I'm on my phone looking at what is a
What
Coyote
is the
motor.
guy?
And so it was pretty funny. 2000, this is like end of 2000 or the beginning of 2015, I think. And um, and so they'd been out a few years and not very well used, but they'd been out since 2012, and
Yeah.
Ford had just barely started to come out with some things, maybe figure out how to use it. So I said, sure, yeah, let's do it. Let's do a Coyote motor. And so fast forward, he ships us his truck. We get a Coyote motor, and we went online to figure out how to put it in and get it to run. And there's nothing. Like it's dark. It's like
Yeah, that
there was
was
like
pretty early.
one.
And that's a big footprint motor, no ECU
Yes,
support. I mean, that's a big
there,
lift.
there was a one Hot Rod magazine article that had some information on it. And anyway, so we, at the same time, we had another person want a Coyote motor, and within 4 months, we had three Coyote motor installs going on, and we hadn't finished one. But when people saw we were doing Coyote motors and like kind of like pretending to be a shop, we started to get people that wanted us to do some. So we ended up doing three trucks back to back to back, all within finishing them all up within like 90 days of each other. And you couldn't do a six-speed automatic. You only had the 475W or something, four-speed that you could hook up to it. There's no controls for a six-speed, and 10 speeds didn't exist. And so we really started to work on just, honing that process. Um, I didn't know about Dino. I didn't know of Adelmo. I didn't know of a lot of this other Chevrolet market. We literally were just in our own bubble and didn't know anything other than 53 to 56 Ford pickup trucks, Coyotes. We
Wow.
stayed right in that. And so that was for like about a year or two, just doing that. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that we were becoming real popular with these era of trucks and Coyotes. And so it became that's kind of how we got into it. Obviously, a lot more details to all of it, but in a easy short story, that's
Yeah.
that's how it began.
Okay, so at what point in this arc do you wake up and realize, okay, this is a business and there's opportunity? Like when does that?
That that happens. It it's a business, and I in 2012 I did actually set up a business in 2012 just to like have expenses and stuff and try to
Yeah.
things I was doing. But it was 2015, that 14, 15, I decided that I'm going all in on and going to give it a shot. And so we basically were trying everything. We were using TCI chassis. We're trying to get into those. I think we'd used one Roadster shop chassis. Um, uh, that was before the spec chassis. They didn't have a spec chassis back then. We were trying a little bit of everything. We got into doing some Chevy pickup trucks, um, just trucks only though.
And I was going to ask. So was the decision early on just stick with trucks, or was that something that happened sort of organically?
It was the decision was to stick with trucks, and because I didn't know a whole bunch about vehicles, and I wanted to stick to things that I actually felt like I had some comfort and knowledge in that I had learned, and I said, hey, we're just going to stick with trucks for a while, and until now, we did one 1970 Mustang for a guy. So we'd done a couple and different things, but mostly stuck in that truck lane. and stay and have stayed there. And we're just recently opening up, and expanding outside of trucks now. But for the most part, I felt like if we're going to be good at something, and really good, we're going to have to stick to something and become an expert at it and just stay in this little niche, if you will, to
Yeah.
hone our
M-
talent and skill.
Mind the niche is a real thing. So that
Hmm.
makes sense. So in retrospect, as you think about those first couple of years after 15, so you made this decision, you're going for it, you're not
Hmm.
selling houses anymore, you're running a business.
Hmm.
How many employees did you have at that point?
Um, I we we went from one to two, obviously, real slow, but then we got to about 6 or 7 employees. I just said 6 or 7. I can't believe I said that.
Some kid
Um,
somewhere is doing a little dance right now. So, okay.
dang it, dang it. I feel embarrassed I even said it now. Anyway, so roughly 7 or 8 employees,
Okay.
and we had, and that was pretty much it. That was for, a few years. We kind of stayed that size and just, um, now there was a 1 acre property with a rental house, and my father-in-law had this little 5,000 square foot shop that we were renting, and I'm building this little business there. And technically, we're not supposed to be there. The town
It's not zoned for,
code is
yeah,
not
yeah,
zoned
yeah,
for doing mechanical stuff. Now, I could do it myself there, but I couldn't have like
a
more than one
business.
employee and
Yeah.
run. So, anyways, long story short, um, we got turned in, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, neighbors finally got ticked, and they said, "Hey," they came out, and I said, "Well, can you give me 90 days to move? Because you can see that this isn't going to be easy." And so they said no. And so then I had to reach out to the mayor and say, luckily I had a friend who was good friends with the mayor, and I said, "Hey, I just need 90 days." And so they made it work. We got 90 days, and and so we had to find. It was kind of a this was like a go no go period for me.
How do you mean?
Do we take on the risk of moving and all the extra expense and money? Like, we're barely making it as it is. And so, but deep inside, I had this like belief that we had created something, we were starting something that could be you know, pretty good. And so my wife was more of a no go. She was like, let's find something else to do. Like, this is too hard. And she
Yeah.
was right. It was hard.
She's not wrong. Yeah.
No, she was right. And but we had a really good product and brand and that we were developing, and I always felt like I'm almost there. I'm almost there. And I kept saying that for several years. So we decided to go ahead, let's lease this building, committed to a 3-year lease. It was about 14,000 square feet, so it was going to be, 3 times larger than what we were in, a lot more money, um, negotiated it, got into it, and it just felt like a monster. Like, we moved in that thing and people just thought we were crazy, and it was a lot of space. And and so we got into it, and we had a couple jobs go really well and things are going good. We had one job that went really bad right after we moved into it, like 6 months moved into it, and we got hit real hard for about $75,000.
Oof.
And that was where you know we had the long talk. I said, "Well, what are we doing?" And she's like, "Let's get out. Let's get out." My wife wanted to get out, and I said, "Well." So we talked about it, and my father-in-law was like, "Well, how come you're getting out?" I said, "Well, I can't afford to just take these hits, and I don't know how to. This hot rod business is really
Did the
this is
customer pull the build? Is that what happened? Or did he walk
no,
or stiff
no.
you?
It was a handshake agreement,
Oh,
and we'd had a lot of conversations and text, and he disagreed and said, "I'm not paying." That's it.
oof.
And what do I have other than a text message? I don't have a contract. I didn't, you know. And so, anyways, my father-in-law, he said, probably like, what's he going to do if he doesn't do this? Like, so he said, well, what would you change? Now, keep in mind, he's He's retired. He's been very successful and worked for big corporations like Nestle, and he did really well. Commodities trader, really smart guy, an economist, and understands a lot of things. And so he asked me a bunch of questions, and I tried to answer them the best I could. He goes, well, I said, well, I should probably get a contract, and I should probably do this, and make some changes. He's like, well, do you want to keep going? I said, I don't know, maybe, but I I don't have the money to keep going. Like I just took a $75,000 hit, and I can't afford to just keep going. So he kept me going. He said, I'll loan you the money.
Nice.
Keep going. And he believed in me, and so we made all those changes. We put contracts in place. We took the good guy, handshake out of it, and just said, we're running a business on these terms, and if you don't want us to build for you, you don't have to hire us. But if you want us to work for you, it's based on these terms. And so once we change that, how we're going to do things on our terms, like it or not, you know, this is it. You can pull the build at any given moment. You're not locked in. You just have to pay your last bill. And if it's too much, you can go take it somewhere else. And so I just decided we weren't going to be the cheapest shop in town anymore. We weren't going to be, doing things, the way we were. And we just changed. We raised our prices. We got contracts in place. That was probably the best decision I made. That was kind of the one where we started to, turn the tide.
That is a scary moment when you make that decision to not be the cheap guy,
Hmm.
to just do good work and charge a fair rate and tell the existing clients, "Hey, this is the way it is." That is a
That's hard. It's
that is
hard.
a that is a hard moment. So at this point, you're making a run for it. You're making a run at it, I guess I should say. But again, like you're only a couple of years into the industry, so beyond having to understand the platform, the vehicles,
Hmm.
engine types, transmission types. I mean, there's a lot of technical onboarding one would have
Hmm.
to do. You also, it sounds like, have to understand the fabric of the industry, who the suppliers are, how it
Right.
works, who do you want to do business with, who do you not want to do business
Yeah.
with, how does distribution work? Like, did
Hmm.
you have mentors? How did you figure that all out in a pretty short period of time?
So I had I had one friend I developed in this industry, and I had developed others, but I asked a lot of questions, whether it was someone from a Ring Brothers booth, just sitting there, I'd ask questions. But I had developed a friend in this business, and I would ask him questions, and we'd share information back and forth. And He was very open, and I was very open, and he wasn't in it much longer than I was, maybe in a year, and so we just kind of bounced things off each other, and kind of helped each other a little bit. He had a very good business mindset, I think better than mine, and so I took some things that he had shared, and then took some creativity of mine, and just really watched, looked, and analyzed, and reached out and tried to build relationships with people as best I could.
Nice. So, if you'll indulge me for a minute, I have a question, but I want to
Yeah.
kind of bring the audience up to speed because we
Okay.
we, we talked earlier about resto mods, and so for
Yeah.
those who don't know what we're talking about, that is a relatively new concept. Like the resto mod concept is basically taking a vehicle, restoring it, but also modifying it for improved
Yeah.
looks and performance and reliability. And a very brief 2-minute history lesson is that didn't really exist until the 90s.
Yeah.
Really, like it was like if you liked old cars, you'd probably restore them, and
Hmm.
otherwise you just go buy a new car or whatever. And
Yeah.
I remember in 94 or 5, I had my first car was a Mustang Fastback. That was just an old ratty car I bought with
Hmm.
my savings. My dad helped me. And back then, I grew up in a part of LA where I lived near Jeff Smith, who was the editor of CarCraft. And
Hmm.
he was the one who really pushed the resto mod concept
Mm.
first at Hot Rod and CarCraft. And like he did the first EFI swap.
Okay.
And I mean, I remember as a kid thinking you might as well have been Werner von Braun building rocket ships. Like, what do you mean you took EFI
Yeah.
off a new car and put it on
Yeah.
what? Like you used the ECU out of like, what are you talking about? No person can do that. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's how foreign that was
Sure.
not that long ago.
Right.
And then just a few years later, and I think like Vintage Air had a good hand in that with, kind of bolt on aftermarket air conditioning. And there were some other companies that came out with, Willwood and Brembo and Bear, came out with good high performance brakes where you didn't have to like scavenge them off of an old car in a junkyard. Like, and that kind of snowballed where all of a sudden for the first time, I think, I mean, the aftermarket parts are still notorious for not always necessarily working the first time as advertised, but until that moment, there wasn't even an option. So now it's like, okay, you can get fuel injection, you can get an overdrive trans, you can get good brakes, you can get good suspension, and you can put an aftermarket rack on a vehicle and have like decent power steering that doesn't bump steer like crazy. And but I mean, it was still kind of a weird niche-y thing.
What do you think the ratio was back then? Restoration versus Restomod even in the early 2000s, 90s, 2000s.
So like I finished my car in 97 and I took it to a bunch of Mustang shows, and it was a pretty nice car. It ended up in a bunch of magazine covers for a home built car we painted in the driveway. And I was often the only modified car at a show, even big shows like Fabulous Fords Forever, which at the time would have thousands of vehicles. And there were maybe 3 that had like 16 or 17-inch wheels, which was a big deal.
So really a low percentage. We're
very
talking like
small.
2% of the industry is.
And I remember I went off to college in 98. And I didn't want to take my Mustang away to college. I wanted something that was a little more reliable and I wouldn't be afraid to park in a parking lot. So I decided to sell it, which I still regret. And I remember, and this is a 68 Fastback, nice car, 351 Windsor. And I listed it on another Phoenix-based company. I listed it on classiccars.com, which was pretty early days back then.
Okay.
And I got $22,000 for it. And everybody freaked out.
That's
they were
amazing.
Like, that is a huge amount of money at the time.
Back then, yeah. That's
back then, everyone was like, oh my God. Like, and I had like, maybe 12 in it.
Yeah.
I mean, now even hammered, that car is worth 3 times that. But like,
yeah.
So it was still pretty early. And then fast forward, I think the Restomod thing was definitely like a home builder thing for a long time. And so I guess where I'm headed is I in 2008, I was in my first office in Reseda in a dumpy little office park with very sketchy neighbors. But I had built a little business at that point. And this British guy walked into my office who was a friend of a friend named Rob Dickinson. And he said, hey, I've got this 911 that a lot of people like, and I'm in this thing called R Group. And I'm looking for investors. I want to start this business. I'm a former singer of this band called Catherine Wheel, and I'm going to call the company Singer. But my investor, who I think might be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was his father-in-law. And he said, but I need a marketing plan. I don't know how to write that. So I'm like, sure, I'll help you write a marketing plan on spec. So I helped him write it. And then I think I only talked to Rob one other time because he ended up hiring his wife's friend who still does his PR today. But a week or 2 later, one of his buddies came by, another British guy who's like, oh, I heard you have video gear. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, we need to do a video. Rob said I can borrow all your equipment. I'm like, get out of here, dude. Like, that's how I earn a living. No, you can't borrow my tools. Like, no.
Yeah.
And then I never heard from him again. But I remember at the time in the marketing plan, sitting with Rob, and this again is like 17 years ago. It's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Thinking like, I think then he had him priced. He was speccing out. Like, I think you could get a nice restored long hood 911. So not like a 73 RS, but like a 69E or something like that. You could buy a pretty nice car for 50, 60 grand. And if it was like not a long hood, if it was like a SC, you could buy those for like 20. And I remember in his business plan, he was going to sell them for like 200. And I remember thinking, that is insane. Like, nobody, this is going to fail. This is a stupid idea. Nobody is going to, which probably is why I didn't end up with his account, right? Like at the time, I'm like, this is dumb. Nobody's going to pay someone else to build them a $200,000 Porsche when you could go on eBay and buy nice ones all day long for 70, 60, 50. So I will give him and that company credit. I don't even think he necessarily is all that involved anymore, but it seems like they normalized, or they were one of the first to normalize this idea that you could pay like new sports car prices for a classic car that has been sort of elevated to a level
Hmm.
of sort of fit and finish and reliability and performance
Hmm.
of a new car. At what point in your, so that was a very long statement disguised as a question, but
Yeah.
at what point in all of this are you doing customer work and you're doing coyote swaps and building big window Fords and doing all this? Do you realize like, oh, this is a thing. Like we can go after this very specific
Hmm.
customer and
That
niche.
so that was, believe it or not, um, 6 years ago.
Okay.
We messed around. But what I learned was it's one thing to do the work, and it's another thing to have products that make it easier to do the work. And so that was one of the things that I discovered very quickly was that I know what I want to do. I want to take this truck and I want to put all these parts in it. And it was kind of just like piecemeal. Everything is just like nothing really like I can get a Willwood master cylinder, I can buy all these parts, but they're not technically designed to go in the vehicle specifically. They're designed to go in any vehicle, but they're not designed to go in my vehicle exactly the way that it should. And so we learned quickly like that in order to do it correctly, it's going to require fabrication of some sort. And so as we're doing it, I'm like, you know what? We keep doing these trucks, the same truck over and over. And we keep fabbing the same part over and over. And they're one-offs over and over. How about we stop that? Like, I don't want to keep doing a one-off of something we've already done 5 times. Like that's starting to just be annoying. And so what we started to do is just say, well, let's make a part that works for us because we're doing the same vehicle over and over. And when that comes up next time, we just grab it off the shelf and we just install it and it makes it easy. And so that's how I got into the part side of things is I just wanted to stop making the same dumb parts, if you will. It's different when you're fabbing a hood or doing something really cool. You have to do that, but I just need a brake booster bracket. I just need, some engine mounts. I just need, something to hold my transmission cooler on. I just need, fill in the blank. These things that are just so repeatable that we're doing all the time. How do we just create the parts for this year make and model so that we can make it simple for us? And then as we started to make it simple for us, we started to get a lot of requests like, "Hey, will you sell those?" And so we're like, "Oh, well, I guess we could. We've never tried that." Okay. And so then we started putting things that we had created online, um, and that was a whole nother mess, is trying to sell things online and keeping it in stock. And I'm like, holy cow. And then they're mad because it didn't ship out yesterday. And like it's just a whole nother customer base
And
that
you have
we,
to have customer support now. Now people are calling and asking questions. So you got to have
oh,
someone sitting by the phone and
how do you install this? I'm like, I don't have time to tell you how to install it. You shouldn't be buying this stuff if you don't know how to do it. And so it turned into this love hate but I realized that building vehicles for people is extremely hard. um, Expectations never align with the scope of build and budget. It's the hardest thing to merge is everybody's expectations of what scope and budget should be, and you're just battling that all day long all the way through.
how do you manage that now when you go into those conversations with potential customers?
So now we tell them the low and the high, and if they have a hard number that they need to stay in line, we tell them they need to build it for about 100 grand less. That needs to be their budget. So if you want a $500,000 truck, we got to shoot for 400,000. So we got to build a
Knowing
budget.
there's going to be like scope creep, like it's
There's
going
going to
to,
be scope creep. Yep. So, and they oftentimes come into the shop. They'll see somebody else. Hey, what about this? What about this? And the scope creep always creeps. And then next thing you know, we're over the budget, and you're just battling that. But you just try to be as honest and transparent as you can. I try not to let my feelings get hurt by it. We're just doing the very best we can, do the best job we can. We try not to cut corners when it comes to like safety and things being done correctly just for the sake of the budget. I'd rather not finish a project and know that we at least built it to this point correctly and quality than always trying to just cut for the sake of hitting a number that at the end is going to look bad on us. And somebody's going to say, "Oh, Fat Fender Garage built that," and then you're like, "Yes," but no one's going to say like, "Well, they only wanted a $10,000 paint job. They only wanted this. They, that's going to be hard for us to defend that." So we try to stick to some, things that are important for us with our brand that we don't let loose something out into the wild that doesn't represent who we are.
I think that's smart. You know what? I've joked for years. We've worked with builders of various sizes since our inception, and I've always told my staff, I'm like, if you have a car builder client, and you guys are a little different because you are a car builder, but you're also a parts manufacturer, and especially smaller shops. I've always told my team, like, if you're working with builders, the mindset you need to use when you approach every conversation is that you're not working with a traditional business, you're working with an artist.
Hmm.
And because they're very creative people and they approach things in a sort of from a creative mindset.
Yeah,
And in your business, yours is a little unusual in that you're very vertical. So you're doing interior, you're doing paint, you're doing fab and engineering work, you're doing manufacturing. What's it like managing a group of people that are all sort of not only have that sort of mindset, but are also probably very deeply invested in the specific thing they do that's
hmm,
probably very different. The guy who's designing parts in CAD is probably a very different mindset than somebody who's a painter or somebody who's,
yeah.
running an upholstery shop. So how do you manage all those personality types and how do you keep everybody focused and like the business profitable, but
Yeah.
also like encourage creativity?
Well, luckily, we're getting better at hiring. And so, first and foremost, we care less about the the most talented person showing up than we do about what's their personality like, and are we going to all get along with this person? It's very difficult to build a business where you have these all-star players who know they're all-star players, act like all-star players, treat people like they're the only all-star player on the team. And that starts to wear everybody out to where it sabotages any success that you might think you're going to have with that person. Um, we had a client who he was on a professional baseball team. He's on the Washington Nationals, and they beat the Dodgers, and he'd hit a grand slam, go into the postseason, and they won the World Series. And the year before, they just traded their all-star player, the very best one, and um, and his name's Howie Kendrick. And I said to Howie, I said, after they had won the World Series and everything's great, and I said, you lost your very best player, Bryce Harper, who had transferred to the Phillies. And so here you're left with just a ragtag team of guys, just, and I said, how'd you guys pull it off? And he said, when we didn't have this distraction and we learned that just as our little team, that we were going to have to really work together and support each other across the board evenly, it just turned into magic and we were able to succeed. And so, and I believe that, and I kind of felt that might be the answer that he was going to say, is that I would rather have a bunch of really good guys with really good personalities who are friendly, kind, passionate, than try to always bring in just this one guy who everybody knows he's the best, but he's a jerk to everybody around him. We don't have the ability to manage that very well here. And so we have 70 people that work here now,
Which is a
and
lot of people, especially
it's
in our industry. That's a
it is a
yeah.
lot. And with that, I would say, we are 98% of the people here are, I hope they're here forever. They're phenomenal, you know, and we've been able to just hire people you like, hire people you get along with, hire people whose personalities match, other people's, and blend everyone. And so occasionally you go through, different people to try to find that, cohesiveness. But it's a struggle, like all businesses, right? You have to figure that out. But I like coming to work, and I like everybody that works here, with me, and it creates the creativity. Everybody trusts each other, and everybody knows the goal. And I don't have to be the creative person anymore, which is what I love. Not having all creative things rest on my shoulders, that they are becoming creative themselves just because of the culture we've created here.
Well, I've interacted with a handful of your people, and we've talked about it offline that what my team has, that they all seem not only remarkably bright but also remarkably engaged. Like you can tell
Hmm.
they're invested, which is cool.
Yeah.
So, congratulations. That's a to me that seems like a cultural thing. Like,
Well, we have some young people here, to be honest with you. I know Spencer, our sales manager, turned 25. He's young,
yeah,
but I would put him up against anybody. Like, this guy is like just on it, on it, on it, on it. He's just golden. And so, you know, he for a 25-year-old, he is killing it, and he's doing well.
that's awesome. One of the things I've noticed about Fat Fender builds is, I mean, given they're all domestic for the most part, domestic
Hmm.
classic trucks, but that seems to be kind of like over the last few years where sort of the commonality ends. Like I've seen kind of barn find looking preservation builds that have
Hmm.
all modern underpinnings to vehicles you'd take to the Grand National Truck Show or
Hmm.
something like that. So it was a pretty wide range. Is there a niche you particularly like, or that you personally would want, or is it all just business at this point?
A lot of people ask me, what is your favorite build you've ever done? And for me, it's always the next one. I have to, it's just I can't my canned answer is that I love all the builds that we've done, and I'm always excited about the next one. That's what kind of gets me a little excited about our industry, is that it's constantly growing and maturing, and new ideas are constantly evolving, whether we're coming out with them or whether I see other builders. I'm like, wow, look at that. I never even thought of something like that ever. And look at what they just did. And you just get to experience, some really fun stuff in the industry. And you can do that in a $1 million build, and you can do that in a $200,000 build. There's little elements that can be interjected into it. And it feels weird to say low end like 200,000, but essentially, that is, for us, that's like the lowest of lowest that we're going to get you a full build. And that is we're not painting it. You got a new chassis. We're going to swap your stuff over it and get it running, driving, get you back on the road. But, there's probably, no interior. You just bring the interior you had, and we'll swap everything over for you. Um, but, but I like them all. I know that's kind of dumb. It's like saying I like all my kids. I have 8 kids. And so it's like saying I like them all. Maybe I like a couple more than the others, but I do love them all. But the ones I like to drive, though, are definitely the ones that um, are a little bit of a patina style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and that's because I want to drive these hard.
Yeah,
and I want to and I want to take it, and I'll drive my customers' trucks and their patina style, and I'm going out and I throw stuff in the bed and I'm doing things with my family, kids, just driving around and having fun and try using it like they're going to use it. I want to make sure that it's going to work for them all the way around. And, so, but I drive them really, really hard. When I get in it, I pull out of the parking lot, I'm 7,300 RPMs in first gear, like, let's go, and just because I want to make sure, nothing's going to break.
Yeah.
So I'll push the limits on it, and we'll put 1,000 miles on them before we give them to the client.
Wow.
It's pretty much our standard, and my employees know that um, they'll come back and they're like, "Hey, we got 950 miles on it. Are we good?" And then and I'm always like, "Nope. Do you need me to go drive the last 50?" That's what I'll usually tell them. Do you need me to go drive the last 50? And they're like, "No, we'll take care of it." I said, "Okay, let me know." And so,
Do you have a
but
route? Like, how do you put 1,000 miles on a build in a relatively short period of time?
yeah, we usually have it done in a couple weeks. And we have some routes. Yeah, we have some mountain routes, we have some flat valley routes, and then we have some just real close routes, for that first 100 miles. Like, don't go too far. Like, we don't want to go get you 100 miles away.
Right.
You know, don't drive 100 miles away from us and say, hey, something the first 100 miles, right? Just drive, a little loop where you're only no more than 15 minutes away to go get you if something goofy happens, and so, and it does. I think we had a truck out on the road yesterday, and he was about, 45 minutes away, and just one of the calipers was kind of acting up, and luckily I, knew a guy that had a shop real close, and so he were able to swing in there and, shim the caliper a little bit and get him back on the road till we can get him back here. So, um, so that, that, it happens. Little things pop up, but that's what we're trying to do is we're just trying to perfect it. So when we give it to that customer, we feel pretty confident that we're not, you know, he can at least drive and enjoy it for a while.
I love that. What's the future hold for Fat Fender Garage? What's next?
Well, we're in the middle of some changes right now. So for us, we're looking to develop our parts business a little bit deeper than it has been in the past. Currently, we sell chassis with full blown all together. You get your engine, everything's powder coated, put your body on it. We sell those. We've been buying those and having a friend, a Porterbuilt Fabrication, building our chassis, all of our Ford chassis and stuff for us. And so we own all the licensing, but as we've been getting busier, we've realized that that time frame is getting too far out for us. And anyway, so we've decided to bring that manufacturing in-house. And so in the next couple months, you'll notice that our frames will have our logo on them, and we'll start promoting that. We have some cool options and upgrades that will be things that you can purchase on them that'll be standard upgrades for us that people aren't putting as a standard. You'll be able to get ABS brakes as a standard if you want it. You'll be able to get active suspension on them. And then we even got another product we'll debut a little bit later, but it's traction control as well. And
Wow.
so those will be the three things that I feel like when it comes to safety in a chassis that have been overlooked a little bit. We're putting people in these, 750 horsepower supercharged, you know, vehicle, and we tell them, be careful, don't kill yourself. And there's no, ABS, there's no traction control, it's just you're on your own, and so it can be a handful for people. And so I think, being able to offer that as an option, at least they can choose it or not choose it, but at least know that our hope is they can add it later if they decided to. So that's really what we're trying to make our product in a way that if they choose to want to add it later, they still can. They can continue to upgrade their product along the way. So those are the three things that we're working on, debuting, right out of the gate on our chassis and stuff. Interiors, we're pushing really hard on interiors, um, building a nice quality interior kit, interior in a box. We'll ship it to you, and then our parts business, and just keep pushing that as much as we can. We got a lot of we should have 1 to 2 new products coming out every week here in the next 3 weeks. So
That's really cool. You talked about how in the beginning of this thing, you kind of felt like you were excited, but didn't really know what you were doing. And we saw a gas monkey on TV and
hmm
took out. And what do you say to the young person who's meets you at Dino's or at a Good Guy show or at SEMA or sees one of your builds on Instagram and says, "Man, I want to do what you do." What
hmm
advice would you tell that person?
Well, I generally tell them you can do it, but you're going to have to decide how hard you're going to have to work. And I usually tell people, I got here because I worked a lot harder than a lot of people, and I paid some steep prices along the way, And so I try to help people with information, and that's something that I really believe strongly. I'll have people reach out to me or hit me up at shows, and I'm just getting into it, and this, could you help me out? And I will tell them as much as I possibly can to help them. Not one person did that for me along the way, you know, and I remember emailing, text messaging, on Instagram, these really popular builders asking for any advice, and no one ever messaged me back. It was just like
Wow.
one person, and I said, I'm not going to be like that. So we have people show up at the shop, and we give them the tour, and I tell them, like, hey, I'll tell you everything that I'm doing. I can show it to you. I can tell you about it. I can give you all the tips and tricks, but I can't actually do the work for you. So if you're not willing to do the work, you'll never be able to get there. You have to be willing to put the time, the effort, the work, and it's going to be hard. And I said, in the hot rod industry is probably one of the hardest businesses to get into and be successful at, because it is very, very difficult to build vehicles and be successful at it. I says, if I could go back and redo it, I probably would have just gone into the parts business only. I would have just said, forget the building things. But the building things is what helped us develop the part business. And so, it is what it is. But I, I will say it's really hard. But I think being kind to people and just helping people out is really what matters, because I want to treat people how I want to be treated. I want to be kind to people. I want to be helpful. And I don't want somebody to think when they walk away from that conversation like that guy's a jerk. I want them to think like, man, thank you. That was helpful.
I think that's good life advice, not just starting your own shop advice. Well said. Jason, as you think back on your career, both at Fat Fender and before,
hmm
and then you look forward to kind of what's next, what do you think the biggest mistake you made was, and what did you learn from it?
That's a great question. So I would say the biggest mistake that I made was, and this sounds really sad and unfortunate, is believing everything people say and trusting them. And because I am, my integrity and who I am means everything to me. Like if I walk out of a store, a hardware store, and I look at the receipt and realize, I left Ace Hardware, and you know they wrote the numbers down wrong when they entered it, I'll turn around and go back in for 10 cents. Because someone asked me once, like, what is your integrity worth? Is it worth 10 cents? You're willing to sell it out for 10 cents? I'm like, no, nothing. I want to be and have the utmost, integrity in everything that I do. And I learned that not everybody has that. Not everybody is that way. And so as we are working in our businesses, listen, only align yourself with people who have the utmost integrity and show who they are by the way they live their life and the things that they're doing. You can align yourself with those people, but those that don't have that kind of integrity, just be careful, because they probably are going to be looking out for themselves only. And that might get you if you're not prepared for that. And and so If I say I'm going to do something, or I say I'm paying a bill today, we're paying it today. That has to be, it has to mean everything. Now, do we forget things, and do things come up, and are we make mistakes? Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying that you know we're flawless at everything, but we apologize. We maintain that level of integrity. But my guys know here that when it comes to right and wrong, hey, this isn't working. Do we just send it? Or, and it always is, do the right thing, make it right. The customer needs to understand, like, just even if they don't know, like, I have to go to sleep at night knowing that we did everything we said we were going to do and do it correctly, and I'm going to die on that. Um, and so, biggest mistake is I got caught up in smoke and mirrors of other people, and trusted and put some faith in them that turns out it was there for their benefit only, and they didn't really care about me. And so I had to learn to just, you know, mind my own business and not let anyone else mind it for me.
That's a hard one to learn. Well said. Thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed this, and I appreciate the fact that you gave us so much of your time today. I think the audience will love this conversation. Jason, for people who want to learn more about Fat Fender Garage, see your builds, your parts business, or you, where should they go?
Well, we're pretty active on Instagram, so if you go to Fat Fender Garage, you'll see a lot of current stuff there. Of course, Facebook. We have a website as well. If you're young and you do TikTok, I think we're on there. So at least was what I'm told, anyways. And but for the most part, YouTube is also a pretty good place. We post a lot of content on YouTube, and
Yeah.
fun stuff. It's fun. Like, I love what we do. Yeah, I think we have the coolest job. When we wake up and show up, people always tell us, like, you have the coolest job. I'm like, you're right. We actually do. We have the coolest job. I love it. And then when a customer's like, hey, will you do a burnout for me in my orange panel van, and just blow through a set of tires? I don't care. I just want a cool burnout. And when a customer is willing to have that much trust and faith in you, and they want you to do that because maybe they're not sure that they could pull that off, or whatever it is, and we get to send our camera team out there and record that, and I'm sitting in it, I'm like, all right, here we go. Of course, I'm always worried, like, don't break anything, don't blow a tire, don't set
Right.
anything on fire. Like, those are all the things going through my head. And how far do I go before I need to pull the plug on this thing so nothing happens? So I'm always evaluating that through the course of the burnout. When do I need to stop, and trying to stop short of a disaster? And so luckily, but it's always funny to see the comments of, like, boy, you're gonna have to buy them a new set of tires, or boy, I bet that customer is pissed at you, or all this kind of stuff, and it's real funny. We don't do a burnout unless a customer tells us to do a burnout.
Yeah.
We do not do that. And at least not one we've posted on social media. And but we're very cautious and careful about our customers' builds, and we respect how much money they've put into it, and so we're careful with that. But yeah, we have a great time here. We'd love for people to follow along, and see all the new products, and watch our story. Um, I won't be doing this forever, Dan. Like, I feel like I got 10 more years in me, and I'm gonna probably want someone to kind of take this over for me. But you get old and you start looking you know, down that road a little bit, because the future of where you think you might retire, you see it coming closer and closer. Like, how long, can you keep pushing? And there'll be a point where I won't be the person that's the very best at pushing anymore. So,
Yep. I feel that. All right, on. Well, thank you, Jason. Great conversation, great advice. Appreciate your time. So thank you for coming on Only the Strong Survive, powered by Con Media. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who loves great builds and great stories. I'm Dan Kahn. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.